Welcome to Whova's Event Insider panel discussion series. My name's Marisa, and I'm your host. Each Event Insider session invites experienced event professionals to cover a new event industry topic. Today, we're going to be talking about event sponsors and exhibitors with Brenda DiVincenzo, International Print and Imaging Conference Director, and Brad Patterson, the Director of the SHRM Georgia Annual Conference and Expo. If you're interested in viewing more content for event organizers, subscribe to our channel where you can see more interviews with top event professionals and new content on the latest event industry trends. Now let's get into the discussion. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Event Insider panel discussion. My name is Marisa, and I will be your host and the moderator for today's session. So I want to give a little bit of background on today's session. We know that many event organizers are seeking resources and tips, not just from technology vendors like Whova, but also from other organizers who have already put on such great virtual, hybrid, and in-person events. So here at Whova, we started hosting event experts to share their experiences with hosting online, in-person, and all kinds of virtual events. So we've been holding guest speaker sessions for a while now, and we will be continuing this Event Insider series every month with a new topic. And today's topic for the Event Insider panel discussion will be about sponsors and exhibitors at your events. It is just about time to introduce our special guest panelists who will be sharing some really useful tips and insights on the subject. So first, we do have Brenda, who is the organizer of the International Print and Imaging Conference and the Vice President of Member Success at IPI. Brenda, I am going to turn the mic to you now if you'd like to introduce yourself to everyone.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. I am coming to you from the Fort Worth, Texas area, and my company IPI, we're based out of Las Vegas, so Henderson technically, but we're in the Las Vegas area, but we all work remotely now, like I'm sure most of you do. So we're kind of scattered around the country, and we're an association for people in the photo printing industry. We are an office of only 4 full-time employees right now, and we do everything ourselves, including putting on our annual conference. So lots of work happening right now. We put on an event usually either July or August, and typically it's always been in person. In 2020, we did a fully virtual conference with Whova. And then last year we were able to do hybrid. We kind of snuck in like the 1 month where Vegas was fully open in between getting restricted again. We were kind of lucked out. So we did a hybrid event because we still had a lot of people that couldn't travel. Our event is usually 3 days long. Several general sessions, lots of breakout sessions, and then also a full 1-day trade show that we usually break up into 2 half days. So that's a little bit about the conference itself. My background has nothing to do with event planning. I have a business administration degree from Arizona State University and mostly an operations background. I was in the mortgage industry just before the economy took a turn, and found myself working for an association and learning how to plan conferences kind of on the fly. I also do a lot of other things for the association because we are a small team, but the conference probably takes up about 50% of my total job description there. And it's exciting to be able, I know that over the past 2 years, I've learned so much from just talking to other event planners on meetings like this. So I'm excited to maybe share any things that can help you, and looking forward to attending these every month and learning from you as well. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Brenda. We're so happy to have you here today. And our second speaker here today with us is Brad Patterson. Brad is the State Conference Director of the SHRM Georgia Annual Conference and Expo. So Brad, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, good morning, and thank you for the invitation to speak. As she said, I'm Brad Patterson. I am the State Conference Director for the SHRM Georgia State Council Annual Conference and Expo. Last year, we did a completely virtual event. We were signed, ready to go with our hotel, with our convention center, and wound up having to go virtual. We utilized the Whova app and had a wonderful experience with our attendees. This year we had an in-person, and it was going great until the Delta variant was announced. And then suddenly we started getting cancellations from our exhibitors and our attendees, but we still had over 200 people there, which was not really what we were hoping for, but it was still a great event. And the contest that we did within the app just really helped drive our engagement. So we're planning for next year for One SHRM Georgia 2022, and we are looking forward to it. We have a new conference director who will be coming on board in January, and it's going to be a great event.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brad, and thank you both for introducing yourself and again for being here today. You both have such great experiences in running conferences, so I am just excited, as I'm sure the rest of the participants here are, to hear all that you have to share during today's discussion. We can definitely go ahead and get started with our questions. So first off, we have I know you both introduced yourself and a little bit about your conference, but would you want to start by sharing some more details about the events you organized this year?
Sure. I'll go first. So we've been able to keep our members engaged throughout this whole process by also doing monthly networking events online. So that's been really helpful. But this year we were able to go hybrid, and I think we had pretty much the same experience as Brad. We jumped in there right as the Delta variant was kicking off, so we had a few people that were a little uncomfortable. Oddly enough, I had one person text me to say he was canceling because of Delta variant, and then texted me back to say that someone offered to buy him a beer, and so he'd be there. So apparently beer is a good solution for that. But same thing, normally we have 300 to 400 people at our event. It was more around 200. So we saw the same thing. But in person, because we kind of lucked out and snuck into that area where most things have been fully open in Las Vegas, we didn't really run into any restrictions that we had to place upon anyone there. It was kind of everyone to do what felt most comfortable for them, and had instructed our team to make people feel comfortable. So it's more comfortable for people. If you wear a mask when you're talking to them, that's what we need to do. And we just kind of went about it like that. And I think people were so excited to be together. I could have just locked them in a room for 3 days and not planned anything. Everybody was so excited to just be with each other. I think just all being able to share their experiences and know what they had been through as small business retailers over the past year and a half was really, really important for them. So that worked out well. We definitely had less exhibitors in person than we normally do. Normally we have 40 to 50. I think our actual final number was 28 that attended in person. We had some people that were there virtually and kind of committed to be online the whole time. And we had little virtual tables set up for them. So that brought our number up to more closer to that 40 number. And then we had other people that decided not to participate because of the virtual aspect, but we used Whova for most of the things there, and we did some live broadcasting, and I can dive into more details as you go into more questions, but most of our exhibitors are very specific to our industry. Probably the only real recognizable one to people outside of the industry would be Fujifilm is one of our major ones. We were still running into problems where exhibitor companies weren't allowing travel yet. So we had a few people kind of on their own come as reps for their company, but that kind of really was a challenge as well to work around.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Brad.
And I would say we ran into a lot of similar issues. We had typically about 400 to 500 attendees and about 90 exhibitors. Well, this year we had 40 exhibitors. Out of that, 4 were completely virtual that we interacted with strictly through the app. They did door prizes, giveaways, registered to the app. They mailed out gift cards, sent out great information to the attendees. But I'm going to say, it was harder this year getting the exhibitors because of travel restrictions. A lot of them wanted to come, but couldn't. And so their companies wouldn't pay for them to be virtual. But the ones that were there were very industry specific for us. They were all HR related. And we don't do anything outside of our annual conference as a state council. We have 16 affiliate chapters across the state of Georgia that do their monthly programming. And so this is our big event once a year. And each affiliate also may do some type of 1 day or 2 day conference. But this is our big event. And this is our revenue stream, the conference. And this year was it was a great event for us. But again, the registrations just weren't there. But the exhibitors were very pleased with the 200 that we had. It gave them a little more intimate experience with if that's an HR friendly term to say, a little more intimate time with the attendees, because there was this rush or crush of people at their tables. So they're looking forward to coming back. And we incentivized them as well for coming this year. We're offering them 10% off for registration for exhibitors next year.
That's really interesting, Brad. So we've heard that generally it can be harder to secure sponsorships or exhibitors when the event is virtual. So have you noticed this side of things, both of you? Kind of what's your experience with virtual events and securing sponsorship?
And yes, we did struggle with the virtual. We were fortunate we contracted with a company called Relax Is Handled out of Birmingham, Alabama, who helped us find a lot of our virtual and in-person sponsorships. They work with a lot of associations around the Southeast and attend a lot of trade shows. So I think that really helped us with getting the 4 national virtual accounts that we got.
I think, like Brad, our revenue model for our association is really tied up in the trade show, or for our conference, we don't charge a registration fee. That's part of our members' membership. But the spending that they do with our vendors is how we fund our association. And so encouraging them to spend money while they're at the event, or if they're not at the event, to do that virtually became an issue. And so what we did as far as price incentives and how to really encourage attendance for vendors is we ended up taking the 2020 fees that we had collected prior to COVID and allowing that to count for our virtual event in 2020 and cover our in-person event in 2021. So they kind of got a year off from having to pay their booth and partnership fee. So I think that helped a little bit with encouraging virtual participation. I think in the end, some people are not technologically savvy and don't see the value in virtual, and you're not really going to change their mind. So we really focused more on making it work for all the people that were into trying it. The first year we did it, I think we ran into problems where people were not as available as they should have been. So we really worked this year on making sure that they had people that were going to be online and more available to answer those virtual issues.
So have you seen, in terms of like the outcome and with virtual events, have you seen a major shift in the return on investment for your sponsors and exhibitors in these past couple of years with the shift in virtual and in-person events? Like, were there differences in exposure or lead generation that you noticed, or like especially with the attendees' interaction with the vendors?
Yeah, I think virtually last year we saw a pretty big decrease in the spending that happened during the trade show. I think that kind of got spread out throughout the year. And I think as a whole last year, the spending was a lot lower. So I think we came away with it satisfied with how much people spent considering all the circumstances. This year when we did hybrid, even though we had our attendance was a lot lower than in a typical year, our spending was almost as high. So I think this year having people ready to spend money and business had picked up and all the engagement that was surrounding that, I think we saw a much bigger increase in spending. So the return this year was definitely there with the hybrid. I would say 2020 was probably a year where a lot of us probably didn't see those returns because no one knew what we were doing or how to handle that.
Yeah, definitely. Brad, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would say, last year when we had to go completely virtual, we did lose some of our exhibitors, but we had several that came back this year because of the interaction that they had with our attendees, even in the virtual environment. Again, we did incentivize them to come back again this year by giving them a 50% off of their registration for the exhibitors. for doing that. For the ones that dropped us last year that didn't attend, we offered them 10% to come back in person this year, 10% off. And so we found that we really got some good interaction. And the virtual component of it this year, even though there were only 4 vendors, the app was lit up with comments and with interactions with those vendors during their available times that they would post that they were like open office hours. And so I think they got a good return on investment, and several have said they're looking forward to coming back next year.
Wow, that's amazing. So with your experiences kind of transitioning back to in-person elements of your event, did you see any virtual practices and strategies for sponsors and exhibitors that can be kind of translated to in-person events?
What we found was if the vendors really weren't tech savvy, they didn't necessarily get the value from the app. And there were several that just didn't read our emails about downloading the app and starting to interact with our attendees. And so they were frustrated. But we were sending out the Whova link at least 3 times a week. So the opportunity was there. So I put that a little bit on the vendor apathy side, not reading the emails, and then our individualized, personalized communications to them about downloading the app, interacting with our attendees, really could have helped drive more success for them.
I agree too. I think what we're doing to kind of, as we go back fully to in-person, I think we've learned that vendors need more hand-holding than anyone else that attends your conference. The attendees will figure it out. And we've tried for years to really coach them through what they should be doing. But I think now more than ever, we really need hands-on coaching. So I think we're looking to make sure we're staffed properly to be able to do that this year and really walk them through both in-person and virtual, making sure they're all set up. Something else we did this year that we normally don't do is we allowed our trade show specials that our vendors provide, we allowed those to be available for the full month of our show so that people that couldn't attend at home didn't have to bombard vendors while they were at the show. If it was, we have a lot of vendors that it might just be 1 or 2 or 3 people that work there, so that we didn't have to take up all their time, that they could shop specials for the whole month and be able to deal with our virtual people at a different time. And I think that was really helpful. I think that's something we'll probably continue to do. And we even did like some direct mail marketing pieces to the people that couldn't go to make sure that they were shopping virtually. So hopefully, I think that's something we'll continue as we transition back to in-person.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know that can definitely be a perk of having that online element of sponsorship, so that you can actually open the app in advance of the conference and beyond the conference, so you can kind of extend that interaction time with between your attendees and your exhibitors. So that's really interesting. Thank you. And I know, kind of to shift gears a little bit, I know some of our audience today might be looking for new sponsors or exhibitors. So how do you go about designing different sponsor packages? Could you share a little bit about what you think the most effective pitches for sponsorship in a prospectus include, and kind of maybe some strategies for how you leverage exclusivity and kind of your experiences with securing sponsors?
So with our sponsors, we provide a year-round package. So we market them throughout the entire year and give them access to our members all year long, which I think is different from a lot of other industry shows where they just have that one moment in time that they're with somebody at a conference. We also provide different levels where we might have a meal sponsorship included. Some different levels will also get educational pieces. So maybe they get some time on stage during a general session. We try to really craft those to make them very educational and exciting. So it's not a vendor just getting up and giving a sales pitch. We try to work around those things. They might get a breakout session. Something we've done to get early commitments that has worked really well for the past several years that we've been doing is we give them a couple of free hotel room nights if they register before, after our event through the end of the year for the year for the next year. So if they're jumping in early and they get their information into us before January and pay their fee before January to be a part of our group for the whole year, we're giving them 2 free hotel room nights. And that seems to get them to act. I think a lot of vendors are procrastinators. Well, we're all procrastinators, right? But to get them to act early, you do have to offer them incentive. And for some like smaller events we've done, sometimes we offer them just like a Starbucks gift card. You'd be amazed. That just makes people do something because they want that one little thing. They're going to do it anyways, but they'll do it earlier on your timeline if you offer them something very simple that isn't going to really affect your budget too strongly. So I'd say on average, we probably spend about $5,000 to $7,500 to get them to lock in early. And that really is only, we get one vendor or 2 vendors to commit and we cover that fee, but we got everyone in early and we know they're committed.
And I would say, we started our tiers around $500 and went up to $15,000. For $500, you could put some of your swag in our bags, just to get your name out there. It wasn't anything up front, you didn't get any meals. But when you started talking about buying tables 8x8 or 8x16 or even an island table, you were then getting meals for 2 of your attendees and getting perks that others didn't offer. For our largest sponsors, since we were at a resort, we were offering 4 rounds of golf as an incentive to get them to sign up and to bring their company with them. And we also do an award ceremony, and we recognize our vendors during that award ceremony, and we recognize our HR professionals of the year in that ceremony as well. So that gives the vendors all an opportunity to walk in front of that group for 30 seconds to a minute to do a quick elevator pitch about what they do and why they do it. And that gives them a good return back on that. And we found that, but of course, again, that's starting out with someone who's paying us at least $1,500 minimum for an 8x8 table versus someone who's giving us swag to put in a bag. And we found that they really enjoy that, the interaction. Plus, we encourage our vendors when they're having their meals, not to sit with each other, but to sit all around that room for breakfast, lunch, our mixers, to go to the break area and talk to the attendees while they're there, because that's, again, going to bring those attendees back to that vendor's table, and it's going to sell the value of what they're doing and the value of what they paid us to be there.
So have you done anything like special or creative to kind of exceed sponsors' expectations? Do you have any examples or ideas on this?
Did live broadcasts from vendors' booths that wanted to participate. So we did it a few different ways. We did a live tour of the trade show where we did a full tour and went to every booth and just kind of mentioned what was going on at every booth, broadcasted that. And then vendors that wanted more time, we did a 15-minute interview with them in their booth where they could really talk through things. So people that were interested in that specific vendor could kind of log in and feel that connection. The other thing we ended up doing kind of last minute, we really wanted people to download the Hooba app, and we wanted them to use have their notifications turned on so we could send them information, mostly so we could get them to engage with vendors and spend money. So one thing we started doing is every day on the trade show during 2 different time slots is we'd send out an application in the next 30 minutes, go find Brenda in booth X. And it was a vendor we wanted to promote. And we're going to put your raffle ticket in and we're going to give away $100. So just cash. People like cash, they can go spend it right away. But it got people going into booths. And then while they're waiting that, 15-minute period or whatever we had, they're interacting with the vendors, they're having fun, they're getting to know people on just more of a personal level. And so that's what we did to highlight people that maybe needed some, not all of your vendors have exciting products and services. I'm sure we run into that where some things are really cool to look at in a booth and other things are, while you need it for your business, they're not as fun and exciting. So we try to bring some of that excitement to them.
Yeah, so a couple of things that we do to try to bring the awareness of our vendors and especially our big sponsors is we market their logo with every communication that goes out to let our attendees know, hey, this group is going to be here. UKG is going to be here. Peachtree Orthopedics is going to be here. And there are big sponsors, or they bought our card keys for the hotel rooms and put their logo on there. So right there was immediately brand marketing. Every time we'd have a speaker track or a breakout session, and we would offer that as an opportunity for someone to sponsor that. And their logo would be front and center when the person walked in the room and the last thing they saw on the screen when they left. And then we also placed our vendors or our exhibitors around our area based on, really, this is going to sound based on the way they registered first. So the sooner you registered, the better of a location you received. And the larger of the booth that you bought, the better location you received, which as you walked out was good brand awareness. For our schedules that we put on outside the doors, we have these like 6x5, 6x3 schedules made for each day. And those vendors that sponsored were also, their logos on there. So every time you walked in, and then for our big sponsors, we had it scrolling across the bottom of the Whova app. And all they had to do was click and it would take it to that vendor or that sponsor's homepage and see information on them as well. So we use that really well to market their brand. And then again, give them that opportunity to get up and speak for a moment about what they do.
That sounds like a really smart way to kind of like leverage that early registration, because that can definitely be the most difficult part of the process, is getting them registered and getting them to sign up. So you guys have both kind of mentioned how the app has been useful. I know, Brenda, you kind of mentioned that you do a raffle to kind of get that traffic at the exhibitor booths. So what do you think like kind of the online app side of things has done to help your sponsorship at in-person and both virtual and hybrid events?
Just engagement overall, it's able to bring the vendors into the member world even more. Traditionally, our industry in years past was very vendor and member, and they were treated as very separate groups of people. And over the past several years, we've worked really hard to make sure that vendors are included in everything that the members are, because that way they have those, like Brad mentioned, they have those casual conversations with them over a meal. That's a much more effective sales tool than giving your sales pitch at your booth, even though we still need that. It's, you know, having those personal relationships, and our group is small enough, and we kind of think of it as a family reunion more than an actual conference. It's a small enough, friendly enough group that they're meeting with each other on these personal levels. So we have, but I think what the app was able to do when we were fully virtual was really just to be able to have people stay connected in a time where they really needed that. And then once we went hybrid, what I loved watching was everybody setting up meetups for at night. We left our evenings free this year because we figured, we were still a little leery about having lots of people in a social situation in the evenings. It also helped us with lower attendance, save some budget dollars to not have big evening events. So we let everybody kind of go off on their own, and we were at a resort where there's lots to do and lots of stuff in the surrounding area that people could get to. And people were setting up meetups to go meet up, and the vendors were also participating in those. So we saw lots of interaction with people outside of the structure of the meeting, and I think that was really helpful too.
I would say we strongly encouraged our vendors to use the icebreaker feature in the Whova app to tell about themselves, because we had 2 people at our conference this year that each got over 400,000 points from posting in the app. It was insane. We were going to give the highest person a free conference for the next year. Well, one got locked out that morning because she posted too much already. And so we wound up giving away 2 free conferences because they were so neck and neck. They were sitting beside each other, just going at it like crazy. And our vendors were eating that up as well. You know, they were responding back and forth in the app. They're doing the icebreakers. They're doing the meetups. They're offering, you know, the first 20 people that click on this link to go to dinner with them at no charge. And when you go to dinner with someone, you're basically their captive audience. And so they have the opportunity to talk about what they do. And I saw that, you know, a lot of our vendors did that, and they even got the registration list. That's something we do as well. We send out the registration list in advance so the vendors can start emailing, and our attendees understand that we're going to be sharing their email addresses. So don't gasp when I said that, but they start interacting with them before the conference ever starts through email to tell them where their booth's going to be. And we also utilize that floor plan feature in the app to show where the vendors are going to be in the building, so they could go by and speak to them at their booth, where their booth number was. And so that helped with the engagement with that, and just helped them connect overall. And again, like I mentioned earlier, just sitting with them for a meal, that's when you really connect with someone, when you're sitting there chatting and getting to know someone. And I had several of the exhibitors say to me, people really aren't stopping at my booth, but they're stopping at the one across. Well, I would say, well, let's look at what's happening across the booth. That person's standing in front of their table. They're engaging them. They're waving to them as they come by, and you're sitting here. So get out from behind your desk or behind your table, interact with the attendees, and all of a sudden that person became a happy vendor because we had attendees stopping to hear what their product was and talking to them because they were just walking by because they saw no interest in someone just sitting at the table with their hands crossed.
It sounds like you guys have both really done a great job of kind of working with your sponsors and exhibitors and like cultivating that connection between the attendees and the sponsors with strategies to like have that interpersonal connection, which is what seems to be so important. And beyond the event itself with these connections, how have you, I guess, built long-lasting relationships between the organizers and the vendors to keep them coming back to your event? And what has your strategy been on that?
I'll hop in on this one. So, like I said earlier, we use a company called Relaxis Handle to help us with a lot of our vendors. He has some well-defined and developed relationships. So we know we've got that group of people that we're going to be targeting. And then we're very specific with the people that we use at our local level to help get our sponsorships. For example, the person who leads at our chapter, at our council, she travels across the state of Georgia in a marketing position. So she brings us a lot of people in that are her contacts in the HR and health field. So that helps us keep it alive. She's talking to them throughout the year about the conference. And then Jack with Relax is also talking to our vendors about what to expect this coming year. It's a continual thing. It's not a one and done, and you don't hear from us again until we want your money. This is a true year-long, can be a lifetime engagement.
I mentioned earlier, our partnership with our vendors is for a full year. So we do a lot of marketing for them throughout the year. We have a very active online forum where our members are all the time throughout the year getting technical support, marketing ideas from each other. And so our vendors are able to have access to that to be able to communicate with our members year round. We also, I mentioned that we do monthly just networking meetings. Not a lot of education there. It's very member driven what the members want to speak about, but we invite the vendors to that so they can participate and know what our member needs are because they're on those calls. So I think we've been able to kind of break down that. And then just as a general tip for something we do for our conference, obviously we're leading up to, we try to do as much coaching as possible, but our show is small enough that we're able to really give people individual personal attention at our conference. So a good example is somebody might be a one-person operation. They're there by themselves. We know if we like to serve food on the trade show floor because it keeps people there and engaged. So we might serve lunch. We know that person might not be able to leave their booth. Somebody from our team is going to go over and either bring them lunch or sit at their booth for them, stand in front of their booth for them, right, Brad? Not sit behind it, stand in front of it. We're going to be there engaging with attendees until they come back. We might give them a bathroom break. There might be different things that we're doing just to make sure that that person individually is having a good experience. And I think that kind of continues throughout the year. And that's why people keep coming back to our conference because they really get an experience. You know, if you go to a giant convention, you're probably not going to have someone on the event team responsible for planning the event come by and make sure you're okay and have something to drink and need a break. So I think that really helps us in the long run.
And the one thing I would mention is the expectation or the practice that we have everyone from our planning committee go by and thank every exhibitor who's there and just chat with them as well and take somebody with them, take a buddy with them to meet that exhibitor and to build that.
Yeah, same here. We encourage our board members as well as all of our members to go by and thank everybody. That's very, very important.
That's really great advice. It's definitely important to, keep those close relationships and make sure that your exhibitors are just as satisfied as your attendees at the event.
So we're nearing quarter till the hour, but we have one final question, which is, what mistakes would you warn other organizers to avoid when you're sourcing a sponsor or exhibitor, or in general with your experience with sponsorship?
Don't overpromise. Don't tell them you're going to. We modified our exhibitor package multiple times this year because we found out there were going to be restrictions at the hotel or the conference center that we're using that weren't there when we originally signed our contract. So don't overpromise space. Don't overpromise where you're going to be, because we wound up having to move everyone around about a month prior to the conference, when all of a sudden the spaces that we're going to use to have just like a regular meeting room had to suddenly be half that place or half that number of attendees. So we were shifting people around all of a sudden and moving attendees and moving vendors. So just don't set the expectation that, or do set the expectation that things are subject to change, but don't ever promise what you can deliver, because you never know what's going to happen. And I think most of them this year really understood that, especially some of them were just so happy to be in person. And then the ones that were virtual, we didn't promise them that all of our attendees would visit their virtual booth, but they did get a good showing.
Yeah, I think when it comes to sourcing vendors in the first place, we all like vendor fees and we want to take their money and we want to increase the number of vendors at our show. But I think we also want those vendors to be successful so they'll come back year after year. And sometimes just because a vendor calls you out of the blue and says, hey, I'd really like to come to your show, or a member says, hey, I've been using this vendor and they're really great, that doesn't mean that they're a good fit for your full group and should be a vendor for your show. So I think making sure you're running those vendors, a lot of times we'll ask board members like, hey, can you check this out? Would you purchase from this vendor? What do you think about this offering? Because we don't want to set someone up to fail at our show and have that work out poorly for anyone. So we try to be a little discerning when it comes to who's coming, just so that we are setting them up for success. And we might offer them maybe a different plan if it's something we're like, well, let's try it. If you're willing to try it, we can, but we might offer them maybe a little bit of a lower package and the opportunity to attend if we're not quite sure.
Yeah, it can definitely be tricky to, set those expectations at the right level. But that's really great advice from both of you. And everything that you've shared so far has been really insightful and helpful. And I've loved listening to your experiences. We still have 15 minutes left in our session. And I see that we have a number of great questions asked by our participants. So we do have some time to go ahead and get started with running through those. And again, if you haven't asked a question yet, it's not too late, so you can type them in now. And you can also upvote the questions that you are interested in hearing, so I can prioritize those ones first. So let's go ahead and get started with those. The first question we have is from Sophia, who asked, how about offering perks without spending money, since our organization is not an income generating org?
One of the perks you could offer just could be the meals, or attending at the breaks, or having the ability to come up and in person speak at your conference for just a couple minutes, like I said, or if it's virtual, offering them some type of discount on their registration fee, or offering them, a discount to come back the next year. Sign with us this year and come for free next year. There are all kind of perks that you can do that don't necessarily require money. Now, meals do have a cost, but the benefit far outweighs what you would pay for that meal.
Yeah, I agree. I think anything that you can increase face time between the members, even if it's a networking activity you do that doesn't have a cost behind it, or extra trade show time where you can take meetings with people, anything that doesn't, have any, you already have the space covered, you're not serving anything. But people want FaceTime with those attendees. If it's virtual, maybe it's virtual appointments. So that FaceTime can still work, like what we're doing now. But that's, I think, what vendors want the most. And that doesn't necessarily have a cost behind it.
Definitely. Our next question is from Jessica, And her question is, what are some of your best outreach practices for paid registrations?
So our association is, we don't charge our members to attend. We do charge our vendors, and for them, we offer them 2020 and 2021 combined for one fee. So we didn't charge them for 2 years there. But no, our members, they go, for them, the cost is their hotel room and their airfare. So we encourage them to attend. We know that the payoff's going to be great if they're there, but we don't charge them a registration fee.
And see, for our exhibitors, we do not charge. Well, I mean, I'll start over. Our attendees do pay a nominal fee, but we have a fee structure offering with an early bird up until full price registration for our attendees. And we have a database of who our attendees have been in the past. Plus, we're developing a full social media package with LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram and Twitter to be able to reach our attendees. And we're getting ready to work with a marketing company to help us develop some commercials and radio spots for next year to really generate buzz and excitement across the state. And we also hit the Southeast. So we can also have South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, and Florida right here with us. You just don't have to be in Georgia in order to do our conference.
So the next question from Michelle is, how did your vendor pricing shift, if it did, and for those who were only online?
We gave a 50% discount for the ones that were online only as a commitment for them. If they'll come back for us next year, they can come back for free next year, but 50% this year.
Yeah, we didn't charge anything different for our virtual versus in-person just because they get a year-round commitment and access to our members year-round. But like I said, we did 2 years for the price of one is how we kind of sold that to everyone when they had to be virtual the first year.
Our next question is from Tom, and Tom asked the question, has anyone tried virtual presentations from vendors at in-person events? We usually have large posters from exhibitors, but are thinking of having virtual only so people visiting booths can see vendor materials on Whova, on phones and laptops. It also allows our virtual attendees to participate. Has anyone tried this?
Because we were in person this year, we did have a couple breakouts where people asked, oh, can I give a breakout virtually? And I think if people all gather in a room together, they want to be together with a human that's there in the room with them. But for one of our general sessions, we did have somebody from Fujifilm, who's obviously our major vendor. They couldn't be there because of travel restrictions. So we had him pre-record a video. That way you can kind of make sure it's going to work. You can test it. You don't have to worry about the internet feed in the room and have to spend a lot of money on camera setups for the people that are there in the room. As far as the booths, though, we did do those we did the in-person people broadcasting the virtual people. We also had a couple of our online exhibitors that broadcasted from their office that the people at home could watch those too, which is fully how we did it the year before when we were virtual. So I haven't, like I said, we only have that one experience with having a virtual person in-person event, but we did a pre-recorded video. We thought that was a safer way to go.
Let's see, our next question from Tracy. I know we've talked about this throughout the panel. Tracy asked, what is the best way to get sponsors for the conference? If you have any other tips.
We have two streams that we use. One is our contractor Relax is handled, and the other is the connections that our sponsorship chair for the state council has across the state. We have a committee. We have our core functional leads for each aspect of the conference, and then each of those have committee members under them. So our sponsorship chair for that represents the council has committee members that work underneath her that fan across the state of Georgia. So we're very strategic in where our committee members live and work and travel so that they're able to make as many contacts as possible, which helps us engage with sponsors and potential exhibitors and vendors, and then reminding them of what they're going to be getting in front of, because coming to one of our conferences also introduces you to the potential of getting in front of our 16 affiliates across the state at one of their events. So it's a win-win for everyone, for the state council, for our affiliates, and for the vendors.
And for us, I'd say it's probably almost 100% member recommendations. So whoever members are using that might not be already part of our group, we'll reach out and talk to them and see if it's a viable option.
Next question is from Anne, who asked, with such a small team, how do you provide exhibitors with that very personal assistance? Your examples of bathroom breaks and standing in at the booth.
It's exhausting. So we have, we've downsized like everyone else during COVID, and some of it was planned, others of it people moved or things happened. So we went from a 7-person staff down to 4 people, but I do hire the same event staff every year. And one little random tip that has nothing to do with vendors that I will tell you: be amazing to your event staff, because you can get the same people year after year and provide a consistent experience. So I have a group of people that are all professionals that work other jobs that take vacation to work our event every year. We've just kind of lucked out with having a great relationship with them. So I have an additional 5 people that we bring on for the event. So this year we'll probably have 6 of us, 5 of them. So that's an 11-person staff. And during our trade show times, everyone's likely checked in by then, because now the trade show's underway. So that's once everybody's kind of already there. So registration is pretty slow. The registration desk is pretty slow at that point in time. Also, we don't have education going on at the same time as our trade show. We like it to be dedicated only to the vendors at that point in time. So our team is kind of spread out doing vendor support only. So it's either checking in on people, thanking people, doing something on the trade show floor. If we have our own booth, there's just 1 or 2 people in there. So we can kind of move around and do things that are very vendor specific at that time. So if you kind of plan and schedule appropriately, I think you can do that. And again, it doesn't need to be a knowledgeable person. It doesn't need to be someone that knows everything about everything in that booth. It just needs to be someone that's friendly, that can stand there and engage with someone until that person comes back. So it doesn't have to be anything other than a friendly face.
I was going to say, I was talking about, we have 10 people on our committee that are our committee leads, but then each of them have committee members, at least 3 to 4. So we have about 30 to 35 people that we can use to go around and provide that support when needed. To take them cups of water or a bottle of water, or to make sure that they're getting to go to the break and get a cup of coffee, or run to the restroom, or run back to their room if they need to get something.
Tom says that we are also a small organization with only 3 staff. Our annual conference usually draws 500 attendees. Last year, we had online only and double the attendees, but half of the exhibitors. We are moving in April to virtual and live hybrid in Chicago and using Whova. I'm concerned about the impact of the split event on exhibitors and sponsors. We're in the academic space where many travel constraints remain. Any suggestions or thoughts in addition to those already shared are appreciated.
Wow, that's a tough one. 3 people and 500 attendees. That's incredible. I would say we were worried about this too when we went from virtual, where we had the highest attendance ever, to hybrid. I think what you have to do is, we only did a few extra things on site that we weren't doing already. So when we broadcast our sessions, we normally broadcast our 3 general sessions to people at home anyways. We've done that for years. It's a way of getting people that aren't there engaged and hoping that they'll come the next year because they get a taste of what that is. So we kept that. That was something that we always do anyways. And then what we did is we added, for the people at home, 1 breakout session each time slot would be broadcast. The rest they'd have to watch recorded later, which we always record all of our sessions anyways. So that just added an additional component. What we did was put those breakout sessions that we were live broadcasting, we put those on the general session stage and just put them in that room so that we wouldn't have to do any additional setup. We wouldn't have to move anything. So we were able to really cater to the people at home that way without having to add any additional any additional things there. We did some live broadcasting from the trade show floor, but again, we do some of that anyways. It did take probably an extra person or two to make sure that if we were going to do interviews in a booth, that those got broadcast out and kind of monitored there. Every day we did like a 5-minute news broadcast with 2 people, one holding the camera, one talking, of just what had happened that day. And then we did virtual happy hours for those people, but I asked members that were virtual to host those so that our team that was on site didn't have to do that. And people were really excited to do that. So I think, how can I do this and not add additional things to what we're already doing, make it as seamless as possible. And then all of us had Hooba on our phones. We have that Ask the Organizer feature that I'm sure everybody used, and just, hey, while you're working, if it's during work hours, all of us are responsible for that. Whoever answers first wins. And then if it's after hours, someone like myself would answer anything that came in, but really we never really get any after hours things. But it's really just a team effort of making sure you're keeping your eye on your virtual audience, but they're doing other things. Remember, they're not sitting in front of their computer with you having to entertain them the whole time. They're going to log in when they want to, and that's when they're going to need help. And you're not really having to engage with that the rest of the time.
All right, well, we have 1 minute left in the session. We have a question for you, Brenda, and maybe we can just wrap up with that. It's from Michelle, who asked, do you have a formal process for getting members to recommend sponsors and exhibitors? Do you put out a survey?
Yes, so we do this pretty much in any survey related to our conference, other things throughout the year. We do an annual member survey to kind of get like a state of our membership every year. We always put an extra thing, hey, do you have any vendors that you're using to recommend? We also are constantly asking that on the forum. But I think now with supply shortages the way that they are, that's really started to happen organically. So members are starting threads like, where are you getting these supplies from? And we've been able to kind of jump in and work with them that way. And then every year we have 2 in-person board meetings that we brainstorm. Okay, who can we ask to be a vendor? And it's our board members who not only are in the industry themselves, but talk to all of our members on a regular basis. So it happens throughout the year, but yeah, some formal, some informal.
Got it. Great advice, Brenda, and great advice throughout the whole session. I want to thank you again for joining us and sharing your experiences. I'm sure all of the participants have found them super helpful. And I want to thank everyone who joined the session today. So thank you and have a great day, everyone.
We hope you found this panel helpful. If you're interested in more videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to our channel, where you can explore the rest of the Event Insider series and more content for event planners. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.